Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nation Watch. It's the 26th of January 2025. It's an election year. It's the year in which the government is going to be changed and replaced by one that cares about people, that puts people first in its programs, and that puts the development of people number one on its priority list. First, let me apologize for the late start, which was due to some technical difficulties and some transportation hiccups. We're fresh from a visit, an outreach, a meet and greet engagement with the leader of the opposition and the people of Parika, specifically the Hydroni market. And it's clearer than ever before that this budget 2025 makes absolutely no sense for the working people of this country. Although those who have crafted it and who will benefit from it along with their friends, their families, and their favorites will support it, the ordinary man in this country will not. The cry at Parika is, we ain't got money. We ain't got money. That's the cry. And when we look at our prices on the shelves, at the stores, the price of a basic commodity beef, that's what it looks like this morning. And that's what it looks like this morning. And if you go into the market, you'll find that the price of arrows, which are grown locally, after the boast by the government that they are supporting and they are investing and they're putting heavy emphasis in agriculture, the price for a pound of arrows is double the price per pound of imported potatoes. And even as they tell us about their investment in the agricultural sector and boast about what's happening in rice, the farmers across the country are crying out for water. If they don't get water in their fields within the next week or two, the crops will perish. And this is not an isolated situation. This is all across Region 3 and parts of Region 4, specifically the Maikoni area. Farmers along the west coast of Demerara are crying out for water. And there is no assurance that the Conservancy has the capacity to supply the needs of the farmers in this regard. Prices, prices, prices. The only thing sustained in this country over the period of the PPP's government in office are rising prices. Rising prices, sustainable rise in prices. And chokehold of the rising cost of living on the working people of this country. I'm joined today by Mr. Rawle Lucas, an economist and accountant who served his country well. He's an educator as well. And today is economics class in session. We're going to be with Mr. Lucas stripping the numbers in this budget. Last Sunday, we spoke with Mr. Winston Jordan, a former Minister of Finance, and he has laid the basis for the conversation that we are going to have today. Mr. Lucas, welcome to Nation Watch, and thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you, Mervyn, for the opportunity to share my impressions of the 2025 budget with the people of Guyana. And hopefully, I can show the people of this country that the negative feelings that they have about the government and the country are well-founded and valid. And hopefully I also want to be able to show them that confidence in this government is low, including by foreign investors, and that the many claims made by the government against the opposition are misleading and mischievous, should I say. And so thank you very much for the opportunity. And what I want to do actually is to start by looking at the,
Yeah.
the performance of the economy.
Yes,
And I could,
there have been some pronouncements by the minister with responsibility for finance regarding growth, particularly in the non-oil sector. And we had discussed previously on this program the fact that the non-oil sectors were in fact not being paid enough attention to, and were not pulling their weight in terms of what is expected in terms of a balanced revenue inflow and performance of the economy generally.
yeah,
Walk us through this chart, this table that deals with the growth rate, and help us to understand what it is Ms. Dr. Ashni Singh is trying to say, and whether that is consistent with the reality that we live in. Could we just move to the first table on the screen so that we can?
no, that's not the table.
No, we're looking at. No, that's not the one we're
Changing
looking.
speed.
We're looking at the change in GDP.
Changing speed. I think it's sheet one of that same.
Yeah.
Sheet one.
Yes. Yes. Right. Here we are. These are the numbers. Walk us through them. Help us to understand what is being discussed in this budget regarding the growth of our economy. You have established that there is in fact a slowdown. Although there is growth, there is a slowdown, and there are implications in that regard. Walk us through this, would you please?
Well, I think the first thing I should do is point out that there's no doubt that the Guyana economy has grown, as the minister responsible for finance has said. Overall, he's pointed out in his budget statement that it has grown by 43.6%, and that the non-oil part of the economy, excuse me, grew by 13.1%. So on the face of it, that's very good. There's no problem there. But that is not the whole story. And the growth figures that he mentioned really refers to the gross domestic product of the country. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about the GDP, because it is important for people to understand what is happening to them when they see those numbers. The GDP is also the foundation of the proposed expenditure of the government in all its budgets, including this 2025 budget. What we must know is that GDP is understood as the final goods and services produced in a country. And that means something, because that word final means, the emphasis on that word final is to let us know that we are talking about goods and services for use by individuals or households, or as we may describe ourselves sometimes collectively, as consumers. It's not for anybody else. And the GDP is telling us that that is the amount of money. When Ashni Singh speaks about 43.6% growth, implicit in that is that everybody should have at least enjoyed a 43.6% increase in salary, or a 43.6% increase in the goods and services that they could have in their house. So as the fastest growing economy, basically that is what we would expect we should be enjoying as individuals and as members of households in this society. But clearly, that is not what is happening. And if we were to go to that table, changing speed of industry growth, there's a column there that says, which is the third column, it says the change in GDP from 2023 to 2024. And if you can see the full table, you will notice that there are a couple of industries that did not grow. Sugar cultivation didn't grow, nor did sugar manufacturing didn't grow. You will also see that that category they describe as other services, where it has the number one, did not grow as well. And the there are no other, there's no other industry that was adversely affected in that way. All the other industries grew. But you will, if you were to scroll right down towards the bottom of the table, we will see, keep going, right. We will see that oil and gas grew by nearly 58%. Other mining grew by nearly 51%. And bauxite grew by nearly 48%. Those are the only three industries that grew higher than 43.6%. And if we were to try and see, well, who benefited, which industries benefited from the 13.1% growth in the non-oil sector, what we will see is, moving back up on that table, we will see that livestock, no, if you were to go back down a little, right. Go a little right there. You'll see just above gold, livestock grew by about 25%. You will see that electricity grew by 19%. I don't know how, but anyway. We see
the ships.
Financial services by 13%, construction by 31%, rice manufacturing by 14%, professional, scientific, and technical services by 31%, and other manufacturing grew by 16%. So in effect, it's only 9 industries in this country out of the 28 industries that we have listed there that are associated with the private sector that grew above 13%, which means that 68% of the industries in which we have workers in this country didn't enjoy that 13.1% increase. And that is critical for people to understand, because what that budget is telling us, what Ashni Singh's growth figure is telling us, is that we as a country should be enjoying a 43.6% growth in our economy. That is not true. And you can see from that table that 19 of the industries did not enjoy the growth that he talked about. So it's very important to understand that. So the feelings that you got that you're not participating in this growth that they are talking about is real. It is valid. And you should not, feel ashamed of talking about it to your friends and family, letting people understand how upset you are about this false narrative that is being peddled by the government about Guyanese enjoying themselves across this country. Now, the other thing that we need to do is to look now at the final column in that table.
That's the speed of change percentage.
That's the speed of change. The percentage, in other words, the percentage is telling you how fast the economy, these various industries might have grown, or the rate at which they may have slowed down. That's what those negative numbers are telling us. So in 2023, the economy in sugar, for example, grew by 28%. But in 2024, we can see that that changed and became negative, and the speed at which the economy was growing actually declined. That industry, was growing, actually declined by about 39%. And if we were to scroll down that table, you will see that 19 of the industries are affected. The speed at which the economy changed or grew in 2024 declined by those figures that you are seeing there. Now, what is that telling us? think of, I'm going to use the analogy of a motor vehicle. You traveling in a motor vehicle. So you left Rossignol and you decide you're coming to Georgetown. And you're driving along the West Coast, Borby's Public Road, at about 80 kilometers per hour. And then all of a sudden, your speed had to come down to about 20 kilometers per hour. What that is, and then you see vehicles backing up in front of you. So you realize that there's a problem. And you might say to yourself, well, there are too many vehicles on the road, but that is not the problem. That is the symptom of the problem. And so those negative numbers that you're seeing there about speed of change is the symptom of a problem in this country that is affecting those industries that have the negative change in speed. And that is basically telling us we have to understand what is going on. There is a problem. That's what it is saying. And if you don't believe that is true, you could check any budget statement read by the minister responsible for finance in this country. And what you will see when you go to global development or global outlook, that part of the budget speech, he always focuses on the speed of change in growth in the international economy. And whenever it slows, he's concerned about it. And so if there's a concern about global growth for Guyana, then you and I as individuals working in these industries that we have here clearly must also have a concern as to why growth is the growth rate is slowing down in the industry in which we might be working. And there are many people who are in all of these industries, working in all of these industries. And so you have a right to be concerned about it. And what I want to do now is...
Before you move along that direction, help us understand there is wide anticipation that the price of oil on the world market is going to dip dramatically, perhaps in this year. There's some semblance of success in a ceasefire arrangement. There's the US approval for drilling oil in the US itself, and there is the possibility of some kind of solution to the Ukraine crisis. All of those will come together to see a reduction in the price of oil in the world market. How is that going to affect us in the Guyana economy, given the fact that oil is playing that major role that the majority of non-oil sectors are really not responding to?
Right. Well, what will happen clearly is if the price of oil falls, then it means that the impact that oil will have on our economy will also diminish, implying that oil too, the oil industry too, will, the growth rate in the oil industry too will slow. I don't know how much it will slow by because it all depends upon the change in price. But it means that that will be another industry that will perhaps, have a negative impact on our GDP, the growth rate of our GDP. So basically, the money or goods available to us in Guyana will diminish. That's basically what it is.
And the reality here, as often alluded to by the leader of the opposition and professionals like yourself, is that the revenues from oil are not reaching the working class in this country. We can see that based on escalating prices. We can see that based on a mad rush to pay out grants, cash grants. That has its own discriminatory aspect attached to it. And there's a reluctance to pay real salary and wage increases and real pension and social assistance social assistance increases. So with a reduction or a slowdown in the oil sector, if this kind of management of the economy continues, what does that do to our people?
Yeah,
Surely there's no hope there.
well, I think if we were to go to the second table, table 2,
Yeah.
I think it will help us to have an understanding of the concern that you are raising. Now, table 2 gives us the value of goods and services based upon our GDP, because as I told you, the GDP is really the goods and services that are produced by the country. And the information in table 2 is sort of telling us what we do with some of this, with these goods and services. And when now the table is given in US dollars, so it's going to be different from what you might read in any of the local publications. The thing about this table is that when we tend to export some of the goods that we produce, so those goods are not available to us to consume in this country.
Right.
So when you exclude the exports, in column 4 of that table, you will see the supply of goods that we get from the GDP that we produce in this country. Now, in order to let people understand the impact of the government's policies on the supply of goods available to us as consumers in this country, we looked at the area of investment that the government is emphasizing in this country. And that is reflected in column 5, that talks about quarrying, construction, admin services, and public administration. Public administration, of course, is what the public service does for us. Admin services is related to the construction industry, in that within that industry, you have the rental and leasing of machines and equipment, things like your excavators and your bobcats and that sort of stuff. And then, of course, you have the quarrying activities that tell us about sand and stone and all the other aggregates that are out there. So we can't, and people have been saying this, we cannot eat concrete buildings, we cannot eat the sand and the stone that is coming out.
They have been saying, when we started to build concrete roads in the new municipalities, this is what Jack Dio was saying. The people in Port Kaituma, Madia, Mabaruma, wherever we're building these concrete roads and the bridge in Maruka and so on, people can't eat that. But their emphasis is on the same thing.
Yes.
In fact, a more intense emphasis is on the same area. So,
right. So the slowing down, if you were to, I don't know if you can enlarge that table. So what you're seeing there then in column 5 is the money that we spend on these goods and services like quarries and admin services and so forth, which we can't eat. So to actually get to the supply of goods like our washing machine, our fridge, our stove, our motor cars, our cooking gas, and that sort of stuff, we actually have to now subtract out the money that we spend or that is being spent on quarrying and construction and so forth to get to the supply of goods and services that we could really use as a people. And so what you'll see there in column 6 that says supply from GDP less quarrying, construction, admin, and public admin services, you can see, if you took a look at 2021, we had about $1.7 billion worth of
quarry supplies.
No, that's goods that we could use. In 2022, it went to about $2 billion. This is US dollars we're talking about. And I want you to see what happened in 2023 and 2024. In 2023, it dropped. You began to feel the effects, the negative effects of this focus on construction. And it got worse in 2024. And I'm telling you, because the government has not changed the 2025 budget, it is emphasizing the same thing. It will get worse in 2025. It will not get better than 941. It will get worse. So the supply of goods available to you, the cost of living is going to rise. There's no two ways about it. So it is quite clear from what I've just pointed out there that the government's policy is what is directly impacting the economy. And those negative speeds that we saw in the industries that in table 1 is as a consequence of, partly as a consequence of what we are seeing here.
So you're saying, therefore, that there is no one, no group, no event that the government can blame for the rising cost of living, because it is its own policy and the implementation of those policies that are causing the rising cost of living.
That's correct. That's correct. And let me tell you this, those numbers are going to get worse because they seem to be doubling down on a practice which is not necessarily beneficial to this country. Those costs for construction and quarrying and so forth will keep rising given the strategy that the government is using to try and continue producing, construction, infrastructural works in this country. There are 3 factors that we have to look at. One is incompetence. The government continues to employ people who are unqualified to do this work. And while there are people who may say, well, look, people must get a chance or something, if you are not qualified to do this work, it means that there will be delays in your project, which means that there will be cost overruns. In other words, more money will have to be applied to those industries, whatever their work is, people are doing in order to, complete the work. More money will have to be applied. And the more money we put towards that is the less that will be available for consumer items, which means the cost of living will continue to rise.
The budget 2025 is larger than its predecessor budget. That budget of 2024, more than 50% of it went to infrastructure.
55% of it.
And the same percentage almost is dedicated in 2025 to the same infrastructure. So apart from fitting into the trends that you identified, the provision of the resources to fuel that is also coming from the government through a deliberate program.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it is quite clear that all that is taking place right now is based upon a perception or a conception that the government has about what is good for infrastructural development in this country. Now, I spoke about incompetence, but then you also have the issue of inefficiency. And I don't know if this is what the government is talking about when it talks about people doing 2 jobs. But I can tell you there's a lot of inefficiency in the infrastructural works in this country because you cannot be a minister of the government and be a contractor at the same time. One of those 2 jobs will suffer.
There are a few of those.
You cannot be a teacher and a contractor at the same time. One of those 2 jobs will suffer. You can't be a commissioner of police and a contractor at the same time. One of those 2 jobs will suffer. So I'm saying you could pick any industry, any profession, any job, and what you will find is that people who are doing 2 jobs, contracting and some other job here, it means that one of those jobs will suffer. And generally, what tends to happen, the job that you are better at is the one that you're going to focus on, which means that all of those who have no, expertise in construction will cause, again, more money having to be applied to the industry. So again, that will have a negative impact on the supply of goods and services in this country. And then, of course, you have the issue of corruption. We saw from some export contentions that as much as about 41% of our money, it disappears.
Is Houdini.
It disappears. we have some magicians in this country that is unbelievable. So with that money disappearing, it means it's not available to us. So you literally have people picking our pockets because it's our money. And when they take it from us and put it in the budget, and then somebody takes it out of the budget and put it in their pocket, they are picking our pockets. So it's not the government they're stealing from you and I. And I'm surprised that, corruption is not one of the major crimes in this country because it is substantial.
But you can't speak of it in the National Assembly of the Parliament. So there's that deliberate measure being taken to prevent you from even discussing it.
So we're protecting pickpockets now.
Well, they're two peas, one short somewhere. But I want to give our viewers a typical example of what you're talking about: inefficiency, corruption, incompetence, bundled in one job. I'm sorry, I don't have the video here with me, but I'll tell you about it. Ocean View I Flood, 2nd Street. Contract was issued. They started to dig up the road 5 to 6 months ago. They're about 4, maybe 5 blocks. So they dug the first area. Now, usually a contract says in its bill of quantity attachment, excavate, and then it tells you remove what you've excavated, and that you do the sub-base using sand, then using a sand loam mix, then using crusher run, and then using whatever else you're going to cap it with, whatever type of concrete, whether it's bituminous or regular concrete. Okay, so
no steel.
No, well, it's interesting. So this street was being done. So they did they started to work on the first block from one cross street to the next. They excavated. They put the bituminous concrete that they removed from there in a corner. They leveled the ground, and then they broke up the same concrete, the same bitumen they removed, and used it as a sub-base for the road. Then they casted a thin layer of concrete over it and left it for months. The contractor evidently has another job someplace else. So when some concrete was left in the barrel of the cement truck, they came one night about 11 o'clock and poured about 10 feet of concrete on the street. That's what remained in the barrel. And this is how the street is being built. When some cement is left back in there, and it's a huge truck. The streets are not designed to accommodate such huge trucks.
Yeah.
You have to have a man on top of the truck clearing the wires, the utility wires. And then when it goes there, you get 10 feet of concrete poured. And then when it's leaving, it damages the edge of the roads, but one particular road that is freshly rebuilt. So there's evidence of incompetence. There's evidence of inefficiency. And there's evidence of obvious corruption, because if you took the contract for this road and you were using the resources budgeted for this road to build this road, you would not have to do what you're doing.
Precisely.
And in any event, if you had a carefully crafted plan, you knew where you were going from the start, you would use appropriate size equipment.
That's right.
And if you were efficient, it wouldn't take you 6 months to do 400 feet of road.
Yeah, that's
And this is a classic example. This is replicated all across the country.
yes, that's the point I'm making. I mean, you have given here, a very good example of what I'm talking about, of the situation in which people are being given jobs to do just because the government wants to run around the place saying, we're investing in the development of the country, but that's not proper investment. Look at the impact it's having.
Investing in a personal interest. It's clear, and the people must understand this.
Yes. So that's part of the thing. But but there's a fourth issue here that we need to I need to refer to, and that there is very low confidence by investors in this country. And those numbers where we see the slowing of the growth rate from table 1 is telling us that. But coming back to table 2, what we ended up with is, you will see, we have to depend more and more on imported goods. And so the cost of goods to us is rising because, one, the domestic supply of goods is diminishing, and therefore, with people getting more and more money put in their pockets through these petty contracts and through cash grants and that sort of thing, with too much money chasing too few goods, because you see the goods are declining, the domestic supply is declining, it means that inflation is increasing. So that's one problem. The other problem we have there is imported goods now. The government, in its own statement in the budget presentation, is saying it has to maintain the facility for freight costs for importers because freight costs remain high, and they have to maintain the remission on the exclusion of VAT, or the removal of VAT, yes, from some products, because the cost of importing those things remain high, which clearly tells us that between diminishing domestic supply and higher cost imported goods, the cost of living will go up. There's no if, and but about it. And that will also happen in 2025 because the government has not changed its policy from 2024, from 2023, and so on, 2022, and so on. So we have that situation facing us. So what that is telling us is that the cash grants that the government is giving out is not going to solve our problem. So even if you get 100,000 and another 10,000 to go to the hospital and to make a baby and that sort of thing, it's not going to help us.
But practically on the street, in the market today, we encountered people who said to us that they don't want to work anymore. They prefer for government to give them money. This thing that the government is doing is having a serious psychological effect on our working people. Mm-hmm. It is giving them a sense that all is well, we will take care of you. When in fact, it is not true. It's unfortunate, but this if that is not the message they're trying to send to people, it is certainly the message people are receiving from them.
Right.
I mean, people have said outright, me want to work no more, you bring money? Are you give me money, man? Give me more than what they give. That's the new mindset. We would sit back at home and collect money. Um, how 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 do you deal with this?
Well, I think there's a way to deal with it. But let me come back to that question. Let me finish this point about why it is that people should not be misled by this government into believing that their life is much better than it really is, even though the people know that to be the fact. Investments in this country. Let's look at foreign direct investment in this country. I just give you an example to show the extent to which people have lost confidence. Investors have lost confidence in this government, particularly foreign investors. You know, in 2023, I think we had about $1.1 billion in foreign investments that came into the country in 2023. And in 2024, we had, the government was actually anticipating about $7 billion in foreign investments coming into the country. But if you look at the budget, you will see that we only got about maybe $5-6 billion. A clear diminishing of the investments. And then in 2025, they're now projecting that it will fall below the 2024 investment figure. You can see from that table there, they're talking about a $3 billion investment, a 45% decline from 2024 figure. Why would an investor, or why would investors not be anxious to be increasing their investments in the fastest growing economy in the world if they had confidence in this economy? And I can tell you, I mean, if you were to take a look at the website of the US Embassy here in Guyana, you will see that of the 4 levels of warning that it puts out there for investors from the or travelers from the United States of America to Guyana, they're at level 3 for Guyana. And you don't even have COVID as an issue. So it's quite clear that there's a lack of confidence in what is taking place in this country. You can't have the fastest growing economy in the world and American investors who like to pursue, opportunities where they exist, being as cautious as they are, in investing in this country. This is a problem. So our supply of goods and services in this country was unlikely to surpass what took place last year and prior years. That's what those numbers are telling us.
So investor confidence in the fastest growing economy is diminishing.
Yeah.
And the numbers are there to prove it. What is required is better management of our economy, better management of our resources, better distribution of our wealth better services, goods and services to our people across the country. I want to go back a little bit, if I might. I found a video of this road, and I want to bring it to our viewers' attention. When this video was taken, the first 10 feet of concrete had not yet been poured. But this is the way the road was prepared. What you're looking at there is crushed material that was removed from the existing road, that was put back as building material for the new road.
Crush around.
This is bitumen that was removed and crushed in the run-ins and put back on this road. And on top of this is where they casted the concrete. Now, what they did when they did the first run that is below this is they did it by night. So you only if you went out there, you would be able to see where the steel was below there. But in a lot of cases, and I'm not speaking for this one because I did not check, but in a number of projects like these that require 1/2 inch or 5/8 steel bars in a mat formation, you'll find if you break those roads that basic BRC fabric was used, a far more inferior quality of materials.
Yard level construction.
Yeah. Even the yards, we don't do that anymore because we now have cars. We just don't have bicycles anymore. We're the fastest growing economy.
Yes.
But we still, in the fastest growing economy, in a Rolls Royce economy, this government still got a donkey cart mentality. You know? So this is an example, a living example of how taxpayers are being robbed or pockets are being picked, as you aptly put it. And do you know that this contract, this road project you're looking at, is not even 25% complete? But,
yeah. So, but this is a good example.
Yeah.
You know, at least a visual, for people to understand that when the government takes $1.3 trillion out of our money, because the GDP, as I said before, is really our money. You know, so when you take that money out and then you do the things that you just saw there in that road project,
that's banditry.
That's banditry.
I mean, they are using material that they did not buy, material that they undertook in a contractual arrangement with the people of this country through the government to procure, to take to the location, to put into the process of constructing that road. They never bought it.
That's correct. So where did the money go?
Well, that is a problem that EDGIL needs to investigate and find an answer to. And then when they're doing another project and some material is left over, concrete in this case, they go back and they pour it on that road. Now, you know the process of pouring concrete and what it involves. You understand fracture lines and all those things.
Precisely.
Now, when you get that, and this is a PPP stronghold street.
That's why they're doing it.
They're shafting their own people.
Precisely. That's why
because they got no
care.
regard for them.
They don't care, yeah. That's why they're doing it.
Abi could vote for him anyway. That is the expectation. That is the indoctrination that takes place. That's why this can happen. I am hopeful that we can look. Well, unfortunately, we can't find that just yet. But there's another video, Mr. Lucas, that I wanted to share with us. But I can't put my finger on it at the moment. But if before program time I find it, it has to do with the construction of a bridge in the Rupununi. And in the construction of that bridge, there are there are a series of questions that need to be answered. But while we look at that, talk to us a little bit more, Mr. Lucas, about these numbers that have been presented. I think we have another table that we can look at as you walk us through some additional statistics and what they mean in the broader context of the budget that is before us.
Well, before we talk about those vital statistics, because that is, Mr. Drayton, Mr. Williams. No, I want us to go back to table 2.
Oh, the first one.
Table 2. I want us to go back to table 2. Right. Now, what I want people, it's important to point this out in table 2. So if you were to go back to column 6 that says supply from GDP, less quarrying, construction, admin, and so forth, you will see that from 2016 to 2019, the supply of goods in this country was increasing. The domestic supply of goods was increasing. You will see it moved from 2,000 to 2.1, not 2,000, 2 billion to 2.1 to 2.2 to 2.3 by 2019. The opposite is happening with the present government, the PPP government. You can see it diminishing from 2 billion to 1.3 billion to less than 1 billion right now. So you see the contrast in the performance of the two administrations. The coalition was doing a much better job of meeting the domestic needs of the people of this country, and they didn't have oil money. And the PPP is unable to do that for the benefit of all Guyanese. That's a very important observation I wanted to bring out so that people could understand the difference in performance, the difference in interest in the welfare of the people of the country. The coalition had a better focus on the people of this country than does the PPP, because all those $1 million contracts that they're giving out to persons and so forth clearly will be inadequate for those persons to actually sustain a livelihood in this country when you look at the way in which the supply of goods is declining.
This kind of information that we bring to the public's attention exposes the reason for the PPP's MPs, particularly their ministers, avoiding in their contribution to the budget debate, avoiding the budget like a plague. They are not speaking to what's happening in the budget. I'll tell you what struck me. An attorney at law, a member of parliament for the People's Progressive Party, said in his budget presentation that the coalition administration placed 400 taxes on the citizens of this country. 400 taxes. This allegation about taxes was raised by Ali and Jagdeo some time ago when they were in the opposition. Minister Jordan, back then it was 200. 200 taxes. Minister Jordan, as he then was, said in a presentation, challenged the People's Progressive Party to lay over in the National Assembly the schedule of 200 taxes that they were talking about. They ended the conversation on 200 taxes while the PPP was in opposition. Sanjeev Dattadin, an attorney at law, An attorney at law stands in the National Assembly for the record and said that there were 400 taxes. The junior black tank minister said, speaking after that event, that there were 300 taxes. They can't agree on the lie. There were 300 taxes. And the black tank minister was in full Live in Guyana mode. You see, when he is on Live in Guyana, he tells lies because he's faceless. Nobody knows who he is. But he forgot that his role had changed. And he stood in the National Assembly and he said that the APNU AFC was raking in hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes when the APNU largest budget was about 200 billion.
Yeah, 200 something.
If your budget is 200 billion, even if it was 300 billion and it wasn't, where were you raking in hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes? And this is what the viewing population has to understand. The People's Progressive Party lies to itself until it believes its lies. And then it comes and tells you through agents like Kwame McCoy.
No, you see, I think instead of asking them to name the taxes that APNU put in place, the 400 or 300 or whatever number
they can't decide yet. We must first ask them to agree on what the number was.
No. What I think they should be asked is how many of them they have removed. Because if the APNU put them there, then they by now should be able to tell us how many of these 200 or 300 or 400 taxes that they didn't like, that they removed. They need to tell us. They should at least be in a position to do that one if they can't mention all that they...
Well, we can tell them that they brought the value-added tax. And the value-added tax came at a rate that they said would be revenue neutral. They lied to the people of this country, saying that VAT would be revenue neutral, that it will replace a regime of taxes and that it will not bring in a single cent in excess of what those taxes collectively would have brought in. Winston Murray, the late Winston Shripal Murray, told them in the National Assembly that it will not be revenue neutral. They criticized him. And when there was a windfall of excess taxes collected from the value-added tax regime, the People's National Congress Reform asked the PPP to pass on that windfall, that excess tax that was not anticipated, pass it on to the working people of this country in the form of salary increases. They never gave the citizens of this country a single cent from the excess taxes that they collected. They lied to the people of this country about revenue neutrality of VAT. Right. And then they collected that money and did whatever they chose to do with it, ignoring the working people of this country, ignoring the poor people of this country. That is what we can tell them. And we can tell them that when the AP and UFC came to government, we reduced value-added tax by 2 percentage points. Mm-hmm. And that is giving real value to the people of this country, the consumers of this country. That's what we can tell them.
Yeah, that is also true.
Right.
So, the benefits that I think that are available to the people of this country, can come to them with the use of different policies. So it doesn't have to be infrastructure alone. There are other policies that we that a new government could employ to improve the quality of life of people in this country. So you then wanted me to look at some other things, but
Yes.
I want to point out something to you. Based upon the information that we have, if you were to look at the budget has personal emoluments. The expenditure part of the budget talks about personal emoluments. I'm talking about the current expenditure. It talks about transfers to the people. Those are the two parts of the budget that would be coming directly to people, either in the form of salaries, so that we're talking about public servants there, and then we're talking about the general population, which would include pensioners, school children, persons depending on public assistance, and so forth. Let me tell you, if people want to understand that the government, this is it's almost a, some kind of magical thing that this government is trying to, pull the wool over people's eyes. If you look at 2022 budget, if you look at 2023 budget, if you look at 2024 budget, and if you look at 2025 proposed budget, the amount of money in those two categories that I just spoke about, that the government is giving us from the GDP of this country, our money, is the same. It has, so people might think you're getting more money because of cash grants here and vouchers, health vouchers there, and so forth. When you calculate it as a percentage of the GDP of this country, it is no greater than what they were giving us in 2022, 2023, last year, and what they proposed to give us this year. So in effect, the government is fooling us.
They are stingy to the people of this country while they enjoy lavish cuts, lavish shares.
They're fooling us. They're pulling the wool over our eyes. And people need to understand that nothing has changed. And so that's why I'm saying this 2025 budget, the fact that people are condemning it for what they see it as is correct, is valid. I can understand that perspective on that matter.
And in terms of more infrastructure, they call it development, but people are troubled by some of what is happening. We have that video, which I want to walk viewers through. Here is a bridge in the Rupununi that they're building. Now, this video is a couple of weeks old, so no, but I got this when it was at this stage, and I walked this place and I discovered something very interesting. You see, there is an existing wooden bridge over a natural waterway, and they have backfilled that area, that place beneath that wooden bridge, effectively shutting off. Well, this is a detour bridge for the purpose of crossing. You can see it's across the natural waterway there. So the existing wooden bridge, which is above that, we'll see in a minute. This is it here. That was a bridge there, and they've backfilled it. So they've shut down the natural waterway, and they are constructing a concrete bridge a short distance away from that one. And they created a man-made waterway over which this bridge, this concrete bridge, is being constructed. So as that construction takes place, there's the continued backfilling of the natural waterway over which this wooden bridge was. And experience tells us that when you do that, So they do two things. They're building a dam and they're building a bridge.
Right.
And to get the bridge built, they had to create a waterway. Experience tells us that they have done this in the past, and when the rainy season comes, the natural waterway reclaims its path
Yeah, it will flood. Yeah.
and it blows away the backfilling that was put there, to the extent that transportation access was cut off. It happened more than once.
Yeah.
But they are persisting with this approach. They are persisting with this approach that they are shutting down natural waterways, creating man-made waterways, building dams, just so that they can spend more money
Yeah, yes, that's
than is required. So this is a classic example again. And people who live there, people who know this, know the seasons, the implication of the seasons, people who understand the lay of the land will tell you that in their view, this is a waste of time. Now, if you're going to do developmental works, this is the wooden bridge that's there, and this is the dam that they've backfilled. And when you look down that grade, you will see where the natural waterway
was running. Yeah.
was running. So see, there it is. If you're going to do developmental work in a place, local knowledge is as important as technical knowledge. Many people who traverse that trail will tell you that in their view, that's a waste of money, because when it rains heavily, as it will at some point in the year, that dam, I call it a dam that they've constructed there, will
be washed away.
be washed away. And then the concrete bridge will serve absolutely no purpose because you can't get beyond it. So this is another classic example of where money is wasted.
So what you're seeing, really and truly, are two things. Of what I described regarding the emphasis on infrastructure, is clearly pointing out that there's a misallocation of resources. And does not seem to be any attempt by this government to improve the allocation of resources. And what you just described is mismanagement of resources. So we have two problems associated with this government. One is misallocation of resources, and the other one is the mismanagement of the resources, both of which are going to make our lives more difficult in 2025. I'm telling you that. Unless there's a change somewhere along the line, that will continue to happen. And so, but you have also been speaking about the misleading information. We talked about the taxes.
Blatant lies.
Yeah.
Not just basically misleading.
I think we need to go to those vital statistics.
But there's something I need to address. I'm seeing a PPP troll here, some sky or some nonsense like that. I wish you'd put your name there, whoever you are, so I can get to sue you. I'll have fun with you in a court of law. Tell the people the number of mining and logging concessions you gave yourself under the APNU. You know, this is what the PPP resorts to when the battle is lost.
Yeah.
All these are intended to damage people's reputation, to damage people's character, and all baseless and all absolute lies. Again, I say, Kwame lied, Datadin lied, and now their agent is here lying again. This is remarkable. This is a trait, a trend in the People's Progressive Party. They can't help themselves. But let's focus on what it is
let us help people to understand that you have to take whatever the PPP tells you with a grain of salt. Because in the budget presentation of the minister, in talking, for example, in the area of health, he tried to give people the impression that the APNU so mismanaged that industry that the PPP had to come and rescue it. And so I would like us to put up the vital statistics. I want the one that says prior to 2015. Oppose.
Yeah,
That's the one.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. All right, let's see it. All right. Now, what you have there,
Yeah.
good. Now, what we did here was to show people what happened over the years. And in this table, we have a number of issues. One dealing with homicides, one dealing with hospital beds, one dealing with birth rate, one dealing with death rate, one dealing with number of nurses in the hospitals, and one dealing with the number of physicians in the hospital. And this went all the way back to 1993 so that people can have a good sense of what took place under the management of the PPP before the coalition got into office. And if you focused a little bit on the beds, the column with the beds, so that's the fourth column there, where it talks about beds per 10,000, you will see that up to 2002, the PPP was reporting that we had about 42 beds per 10,000 Guyanese.
This is in the hospital system.
This is in the hospital system. And then if you were to move that table down a little so that people can see the trend from 2003 going all the way down to 2014, you will see that dramatically the number of beds fell to 25 per 10,000 Guyanese. I've never heard anybody in the PPP, and this information is taken from the budget statistics presented by the PPP over the years. Nobody in the PPP, I've never heard anybody in the PPP explain how it is we move from 42 beds per 10,000 Guyanese to 25 beds per 10,000 Guyanese.
But I would like to have an explanation as to the reason or the justification for not buying beds and equipping existing hospitals as opposed to building new hospitals.
Again, it's a misallocation of resources. It's a misallocation of resources. You're not putting the resources where the people need it and can access it. You're going to create something.
But what is even clearer is it is a deliberate misallocation.
Yes.
So that the benefit can go to whom the government intends for it to go to, and to hell with the people of this country.
That's right. So that's what you're seeing there in that table. If you can scale it up again for me, please. So that's beds per 10,000. So when Ashni Singh comes into the parliament and tells Guyanese that what they inherited from APNU AFC was dismal, he was really talking about his own government, not the coalition government. Let us then jump over to the nurses, because that is also a very instructive thing. You can see that the moving average, and we use the moving average, the 4-year moving average, because we know that things change. People leave, people come, and so forth. So we want to get a good sense of how many nurses we had per 10,000 Guyanese. And you can see we had from 1997 an average of about 10 nurses, if you can scroll down so that the viewers can see this. It basically ranged from somewhere between 10 to 18,000, 18 per 10,000 in 2014, I'm sorry, 2014. I want you now to go to the next table on
On the
post
yeah. The next
2015.
the next sheet
Yes.
on the same file will help us there.
No,
No,
it's the same
the same
file,
right, but
but
the other page.
the
Let's
next
click
sheet.
on page 2. Yeah. So while we get that up,
Yeah, so what you will see is not only what the coalition was able to do, particularly in the area of our nurses, but what happened afterwards, after the coalition left the government. And yet, the PPP has the audacity to tell the people of this country that the coalition didn't do anything good for this country. If you can,
we'll get it up in a minute.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind-boggling that people who want to be understood and taken seriously as leaders of the country can be doing the things that they're doing. Yes, so if we were to look at that table, that's correct. I'm looking at the vital statistics under the coalition. So from 2016 to 2019, I took that. Let's go to the nurses, the 4-year moving average. Look at the number of nurses per 10,000 Guyanese.
More than double.
More than double, 35. Scroll down, let us see what is happening right now under the PPP. You down to 23.
Well, they shut down the nursing school.
Precisely, they have been undermining healthcare in this country just to what it looks like to help their friends, family, and favorites. That's what's happening. That is what we are being faced with as a country. You know, I also want to.
But before you move off, it is important to note that to grow the nursing population, you had to train.
Mm-hmm.
You had to invest in training. And then when the People's Progressive Party came into government, they said that there were too many nurses. And that's why they shut down the nursing school in Linden. And that's what's responsible in large measure, outside of the wages, for a reduction in the number of nurses available. Coming to realize that that is what happened, and that was a consequence of their action, they did not reopen the nursing school in Linden.
Right.
They opted instead to build one on the Essequibo coast.
Somewhere else.
So, no, but not just somewhere else, but you shut down the one in Linden, where you get no support politically. You suffer the population of this country by robbing the population of the number of nurses that they require.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take a contract that filters money into the pockets of your friends, your families, your favorites, to construct a brand new facility in a place where you believe that you will get more support.
So it continues, the misallocation of resources continues.
And so we must wait until that facility is ready before we start using it for the purpose of training nurses. In the meantime, the health sector suffers.
Yeah, people are suffering. The people are suffering.
You know, this is
ridiculous. So going back to that, to the tables there, there's something else I want to point out, which is very fascinating. Let us look at the beds. You will notice that based upon what was inherited by the coalition from the PPP, in 2015, we ended up after the looking at the 4-year moving average at about 22 beds per 10,000. I want you to take a look at the vital statistics under the PPP for beds. And you will notice in 2024, it says that the absolute number is about 36 per 10,000, but the moving average is about 27 and so. Now, the PPP is promoting that 36 beds per 10,000 as an accomplishment. Imagine they're the ones who destroyed it, and now promoting that as an accomplishment. But I want to remind people, and if they took a look at the first table, they will see that in 1994, we had 36 beds per 10,000.
So go back to the other table just for reference.
We had 36 beds in 1994. Look at there, 35.9.
Yeah. So we've run fast to stay in the same place.
Same place. we haven't achieved anything. So after 30 years, the PPP is boasting about getting back to where we were a long time ago. That is not a party of the future.
Well, they did the same thing in the education sector when they claim, I see their supporters posting that free education at university will start in 2025, without reference to the fact that it ended under the People's Progressive Party in or around 1994.
Yeah, that's what they do. They have this habit of changing the narrative.
Yeah.
And
of lying, man.
Well,
changing narrative. Call it out for what it is. It's lying. Blatant, brass-faced lying.
Yeah, so really and truly, if people were to take the time to follow the history of the performance of the PPP in this country, they would realize that what they are saying in even this year's budget is very misleading and very mischievous. Those are some of the major problems that we have facing us in this country.
But you know, there is nothing in the budget that I can recall seeing or reading or hearing that treats with dredging the Demerara River Channel, for example. Now, there's an increase in shipping activity.
Mm-hmm.
Building material will have to come in. Some of them are being prefabricated external to Guyana and now being brought in. Bauxite is on the increase. It's grown.
So it seems.
We're talking about if that is to be, if that is true, then obviously your shipping needs will have to expand to accommodate your exports if the actual production is going up.
Mm-hmm.
You have pointed out that we're relying more and more on imported goods than we are on locally produced goods, and you've produced the numbers to support that. It means that shipping is on the increase.
Yeah, it's important.
But there's absolutely nothing there for dredging the Demerara River Channel. Commuters, West Demerara, coming to Georgetown. Inconvenience. Owners of well, I don't call them speedboat because there's no speed associated with those boats. But they're grounded on the mud flats. What would it take the government in an oil-rich economy to dredge the place to serve the people of this country?
No, it's clear. This is not about the people of the country. This is about some people of the country. I mean, I've heard people over the years keep referring to, the PPP serving friends, family, favorites, and flatterers. And it is not an empty refrain. It is the truth. This is what the data is telling us. It's the truth that all they care about is themselves.
Well, clearly, because they're giving contracts, they've developed a contractor middle class that is part of their elite group, and then they pass on subcontracts to people who really can't manage the thing.
Yeah.
And
Or do the work.
yeah, and by the time the person who secured the contract, I call them the middlemen, by the time they scoop off their share and send back the other share, there's insufficient money to complete the contract. And therefore, what we're stuck with is a set of roads that give you Nara. Guyanese people know what is Nara. I don't care how good your suspension is. You're going up and down. You're bouncing around. And the edges are bad, and people have been identifying this. And in the process of building roads, you're destroying other roads.
That's right.
So you have to go back and do those that you have destroyed in the process of building these new ones. And within a year or two, you have to come, well, in the case of the Heroes Highway, in a couple of months, you have to come back and rebuild what you already built. So this budget is clearly devoid of measures to make life better for the people of this country.
That's correct.
And when you talk about one Guyana, you're talking about a one-sided Guyana.
Yeah. That's. I think they left out the other part today.
Yes, absolutely one-sided. It cares not about the majority. It cares only about the few that the PPP determined should benefit. And then they come back to the ordinary, hard-working citizens of this country and say to them, here's 100,000 cash grant. Here is a 10,000 to go and see a doctor when we're supposed to be giving you free medical services, you know? And like the people on the West Damar have been saying, they pass we with this increase for the give we as old age pensioners. You know, we can't walk and go to the place to collect you. We gotta go with taxi. By the time we go with taxi and come back, the increase done. You know? So this is the reality, ladies and gentlemen. This budget is a hoax, and it's Ashni Singh's exit act from the National Assembly of the Parliament as Minister with responsibility for finance. Mr. Lucas, your closing thoughts in summary on budget 2025, the one that never got off the ground.
No, well, Mervyn, I tell you, in looking at the data that we discussed today, I think it ought to be evident to the people of this country that one, the claims that the government keeps making, the PPP government keeps making about progress in this country is not really, is illusionary. That's what we should say, really. And the attempt to boost people's confidence in them is actually failing, because this is what this budget has done. This budget has exposed the duplicity of the PPP with respect to the promise and assertions that it has made about wanting to help people in this country and wanting people to become greater investors in this country. You can see from those numbers that that is not the case, because people do not have the capacity to do it, and certainly people are now losing confidence. And I can tell you of many experiences of many investors in this country who are frustrated by the lack of support that they're getting from this government, even though this government talks a lot about agriculture and manufacturing and that sort of thing. And the other thing too, of course, is that I would try to encourage people to be a bit more objective and not be taken in by the statements and comments that the PPP likes to make and all the flashy things. They have out there, what we would say, snippets about the budget and what it will do. But I just pointed out that if you check the budget, the amount of money that they're going to give in by way of transfers and cash grants and that sort of thing, plus the salaries that they will pay to the people of this country, it is no different from it was 4 years ago and 5 years ago.
And the budget is what? 15 times larger than it was?
Than it was. So that's where we are with this government. So I would just simply encourage people to continue paying attention and realize that the PPP is actually trying to hoodwink them and pull the wool over their eyes. And they need to be conscious of what is going on and be prepared, to determine whether they want these people to continue leading them.
So the question is, are you better off than you were in 2019? Are you safer in your homes? Are you safer in your business places? Are you safer on the roadways than you were in 2019? Are you experiencing a higher quality of health care in the public health care system than you were experiencing in 2019? Is your pension giving you more value in the shops, in the supermarkets, than your pension was giving you in 2019? These are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves as we move forward in this election year and as we make very important decisions in our lives, in the life of our country, and in the interest of our children. That's all for Nation Watch today. Thank you very much for joining us and staying with us. We went overtime and we will continue to go overtime whenever it's necessary in this election year. Until we meet again, God bless.